So I think we can start. Can we start? Yes. I see nobody else knocking at the door, so we can start. So thanks for joining us this afternoon to this conference on an issue which certainly deserve more attention from, let's say, from politics. We can say it now. It's election have passed, not definitely. They are missing some issues, so let's help them to find one. Infrastructure would certainly be one. What kind of infrastructure, sorry for my pronunciation, I have a problem with this word, do we need to support the energy transition? We are not talking only about electricity infrastructure, only electricity network, but also with transport, heating, power supply, and so on. That means the whole backbone that allow essential services to be provided. That's what I hear. We are all kind of infrastructure represented. So first I will introduce the speakers, and then we will launch discussion. Simple organization. So I will go by, not in order, otherwise it won't be funny. So let's start in this order. Amir, you start with the A, so it's easy. So Amir, this morning I already asked you whether you were the living proof that investment funds can act for the planet, and you said yes. Maybe you can introduce yourself briefly?
Thank you, Fabiola. I'm the lead for energy transition within Arden, and also one of the founders and the chief investment officer of Hy24, which is a dedicated infrastructure fund for hydrogen that we have launched this year. Yeah, to answer your point, we do strongly act on climate change action through energy transition investments in renewables in particular, but also now with the new dimension that is emerging in the hydrogen infrastructure play.
Thanks, Amir. François, at the other side. François Billard, you are the managing director of Geocell, a company which operates a massive hydrocarbon storage facility. So we all guess that this day you have been really busy. So you haven't prepared this conference. I can tell everybody you didn't have time to prepare it because the Ukrainian crisis is here. So please, would you mind just explaining a little bit more about Geocell? You are a massive storage hydrocarbon facility, but you also have
So Geocell is as like Fabiola said, is a massive storage facility for hydrocarbons that has been designed for obvious strategic purposes to be able to continue to have energy supply mostly for mobility during international crises like unfortunately we are facing right now. And but also Geocell has three main characteristics. It's massive energy storage. I mean, our storage capability represents 2 months of consumption, of French consumption of hydrocarbons. So that means that we have the capability to feed, to supply the country during 2 months. Then after that, it's very cheap, as a matter of fact. So it's for business-wise, it's very interesting. And thirdly, it has a very minimal environmental impact. If you know our site is under a forest, so it's quite incredible to see that the biggest oil storage facility in France, as a matter of fact, is in the natural park of Luberon, with an increase of biodiversity and things like that. And we have interesting assets also for the energy transition that can be used in this coming hydrogen economy, and maybe further I will elaborate on that.
Thanks, François. I was afraid you will start talking about your huge project, and I would have been obliged to cut you.
What's my mark on 10? Did I get...
Great, you did great.
Okay, thank you.
So just close to you, Pierre Chambaud, you also are involved in storage. You are the CEO of Storengy France, a subsidiary of Engie, and the leading natural gas storage operator in France. So your agenda must be really also crazy at that time. So please tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah.
I feel even maybe we have experts of infrastructure in this room, but I also guess that if we are not experts, we didn't really know that we had this kind of storage in France, 3 months capability of oil consumption in France, and now gas. So that's why I asked you just to make people realize that
Storage is not only present in France, but we are also present in Europe. We are the first operator in Europe.
In Europe, sorry.
Present? No, don't worry. First one in France, but also we are present in the UK and with Salt Cavern, and also in Germany. And as an operator, in fact, we just store some gas underneath, also underground storage, and we are storing 25% of the French consumption, which is a good news, taking into account the crisis we have now due to the Ukraine war and the problem of natural gas, natural gas supply. Sorry, thank you. Just to tell you that our job is to operate and maintain, and we have around 50 different clients that are going to buy some capacities in order to inject the gas during summertime and to withdraw the gas during winter time. Because I don't know if you know, but in France we are consuming the consumption is 5 times higher in the winter in comparison with the summer. Only 2 times for electricity, 5 times for gas. So the seasonal effect is very high in France.
Thanks a lot, Pierre. So it will be interesting to see how this kind of infrastructure storage can help and even support the energy transition. Andrea Andorno, with the Italian accent, is always more beautiful. You are the CEO of Sagat company, which is in charge of the Torino airport. And just a little thing, in your LinkedIn profile, you mentioned that you have an innovative way of thinking, and what you are going to explain to us later on is that effectively you carry one of the most innovative energy transition projects for an airport, you can say, in the world.
Thank you very much. Yes, Turin Airport is a medium-sized airport in Europe, and as many airports actually as the entire air transportation industry, we're seeking innovation in order to move forward into a much cleaner air transportation business. So as an airport, it's an infrastructure, so everybody thinks about airplanes and how they pollute. We want to start on our side by having a much greener immediate impact in terms of environmental energy production. So we have developed a unique fuel cell hydrogen-ready project which will self-produce energy for the airport, heating and electricity.
And you will tell us a little bit more about that. Thanks a lot, Andrea. And Eero Orane, I hope I pronounce well, because I'm so sorry. I hate when people pronounce in a bad way my name, so I hope I didn't do the same. So you are the CEO of Inordic. Inordic is an Indian sustainable energy investment platform, and that's interesting. Why are you calling you an investment platform in the Scandinavian? So please tell us, who are you? What is Inordic?
Yes, well, you pronounce my second name very well, so heard much worse. Inordic, it's an investment platform for energy transition, and Amir said in his opening speech in the other room earlier this morning that make the energy or green transition requires that different industries, different sectors start to talk to each other, and this is what it's all about. Utility people, wind and renewable people don't work anymore in silos, they talk together, and we bring new technologies like hydrogen to the equation. So we have 3 sectors or segments talking to each other. That's the platform. Yeah,
thank you. You create synergies, and we are going to elaborate on that later on. So, what kind of infrastructure for the energy transition? First thing, Amir, you started for the introduction. You saw there is no reason why you shouldn't continue. So. When we think about energy transition, we are always saying, and we talk about that this morning, we say we have to get rid of fossil fuels, we have to develop renewable energies, and it's really rare, even in the media, even in the politician objectives and so on. I mean, official all over Europe, maybe, I don't know, you will tell us, that we hear about the need to help the transition of infrastructure. According to you, it's a big mistake. Can you explain why?
Yes, because on one side, when we talk about energy transition, we talk about the fact that we need to produce energy from cleaner sources. On the other side, we say people need to consume cleaner sources, have cleaner usage of energy for their cars, for heating, for industrial matters, etc. So we talk a lot about supply, we talk a lot about demand, but to connect supply and demand, you need infrastructure, right? There is this vision right now that things will be interconnected in a very local way. But the reality is that the world we have been evolving in for the past 100 years has been an interconnected world with long distances to carry places where you can produce the energy with the lowest cost and the best resource available to the consumption places. And in fact, with renewables today, which are producing power, you have a limitation because electricity is not really well suited for long distance transportation. It's not easy to store it for a long time. It is intermittent when you produce it from renewable sources. So to deal with that matter, you need infrastructures that somehow have the same characteristics as the one that have been used in the past for the transportation of the fossil fuels. And which infrastructures are we going to use? Are we going to create from scratch a whole new world of infrastructures? Or are we going to use what is already there available for us and make it more sustainable?
Yes, that's a question maybe we should all ask ourselves. I mean, that's a general question, but you are representing investment fund. So what is an investment fund doing in this? Why are you thinking about that?
Well, I guess the answer is a bit in the question I asked is, I mean, if you are exposed to infrastructures that are carrying today fossil fuels, you have two options. Either you stay with that infrastructure and you milk it like a cow, and the cow ultimately dies because you have taken all the milk out of it. And that's what's happening with fossil fuel infrastructures. And many people don't really think about what's going to happen next. Or your other option is that you make this infrastructure future-proof. And that means that you need to invest into these assets. And in fact, it means that you have to accept that there is a J-curve with these investments, meaning that at the beginning you will invest and not have the immediate return. And if you have a long-term view, and it's the case with Arden in particular, we never invest with a short-term 4 or 5 years view. We build business plans over 40 years. If you have that view, then ultimately you understand that there is a strong merit to convert existing assets with the view that they will have this long-term extended life. And this makes a lot of sense from a return perspective, actually, which is ultimately what our investors are looking for.
If I translate well, according to my understanding, you are saying that you are going and you are in favor of converting the traditional infrastructure, especially the one that was made for oil, and all our infrastructure was built for oil and fossil gas. So you incite your portfolio company to invest and to convert them.
Yeah. I think the way we deal with it is as investors into a number of portfolio companies which have exposure to fossil fuels, we can give them a guideline, a direction of what we're expecting. We could tell them, stick with what you have right now and just get the cash out of it and we'll be very happy with the returns. But we could also tell them, well, take a long-term view because ultimately what makes the value in the long term of the asset is to make the transition, to get ready for the transition, to become a greener asset, to be compatible with the energy transition. And effectively, there's a few CEOs here of portfolio companies and they will testify and say whether we are doing a good job in giving them this vision. But effectively, that's what we are aiming for. We're not aiming for a short-term just cash flow yield. We're also looking for a long-term value from these assets. So we give incentives to the management teams to have an ESG approach to the investments. And we give them the capital. We tell them we're ready to invest alongside you in the assets to make them future-proof.
Hero, do you testify that Amir gave you the good incentive to convert? old infrastructure, a new one, and if you had an example, a concrete example, it could be great.
Yeah, that would be the kind of a school books example. District heating utility company Neville, 2 years back, it was a company which was operating 150 combustion plants, boiler plants, and many burning peat, oil, that's fossil fuels. And as a first step, we just converted those to fossil-free, converting them to utilize biomass. So in a matter of 2 years, the whole fleet had a fuel switch.
Eero, I don't know whether, would you mind just please keep the, because I don't know whether all the, did you understand the project, or do you want, maybe we can give more details about that, because you want, you know, we are not experts, I think, most of them are not experts, so please, you are talking to a, let's say, 12 years old child, so would you mind explaining, because it's such a great project, when you explained it to me, the Naval project is a great project, so please, what is Naval, and what was the problem, and how did you solve it?
Well, Neville was burning fossil fuel. It is a district heating utility company operating 150 plants. And in 2 years' time, after the acquisition by Ardian funds, it was converted to utilize only biomass as fuel, which is regarded fossil fuel. And it was not only sort of dictated by the environmental performance, but it also boosted the bottom line.
What do you mean by boosting the bottom line? And just to make some precision, a quick one. The Naval was using, because I didn't know the word, so I had to look in Google and at Google Translation how to make it. So first, the Naval was using, in French, is tourbe. Is that correct? Tourbe. It's peat. Peat is tourbe. So it was using peat, and it went to biomass. Sorry if all of you know, but I didn't know, so I tell you.
Yeah, but making a utility company 100% fossil to zero carbon, it's also business. So we boosted the bottom line, meaning that the EBITDA doubled by converting the fuel source. So second thing, we let the engineers to work, that's what they love, think about new things, increasing the efficiency, and we invested in a lot of efficiency improvement gadgets to the power stations, flue gas condensers, demand side management, electrical boilers, heat pumps, converting excess heat back to cooling purposes, these kind of things. And then what we see in the future is that the role of electricity, and that's where this platform idea and green electricity and wind power comes into the play, will play a bigger role in heating applications. So the heat pumps will use electricity, which is generated by green energy. And this is something what's going to be in our agenda in the coming few years, to convert it to not combusting even biofuel, but utilizing 100% green energy.
I realize I should have asked you to make a slide just summarizing the project. My mistake, sorry. But I'm sure if people want to know more about this project, they can go on your website. Is that correct?
For sure, yes.
Never. Just one last question. How much time does it take to make such a conversion? You had something that used oil and peat, and you want to convert it into biomass. How many years?
2 years.
Oh, that's fast.
I mean, the technology is there. It's just to have the target, the goal, the aspiration to make it.
And the money.
Oh yeah, money. Sure. But this was a profitable investment. We could have borrowed that money from the bank as well.
Thanks a lot, Eero. Pierre, we are talking about 2 years to convert. What about you? You have a lot of storage gas cavity in France and Europe. And now, I mean, we are at the heart of a crisis that even leads France to look for gas, liquefied gas from the other part of the world. So in such a crisis, do you have time to think about energy transition of your assets?
Yeah, yeah, we have to, yeah. First of all, I have to testify that I'm the only one that cannot have a judgment on Amir behavior in my board because I'm the only one that haven't Ardian in the board.
Yeah, you are sorry I didn't precise it yet.
But I'm sure he's making a very good job. Concerning, perhaps it's important to come back to the role of underground gas storage. I think it's quite important, specifically during this crisis, because we are going to see that this role and the different part of this, the different roles we are playing on natural gas, it's the same that we want to play during this energy transition. So the first role is the security of supply, of course, for customers, for authorities, for states. It's not the total security of supplies. We are part of this security of supply. The second role is for suppliers because we can help them to manage price and volume risk. And if you speak with an investors, they are very reluctant about this price and volume risk. So this can be a good help for them. And the third point is the system value because we help to optimize the total gas network system and later the electrical and gas networks. We will help to do that, specifically now the transmission system because the transmission system is taking into account that we have some storage in France, everywhere in France, and that helps to transport gas and to store it, of course. So this is the three main advantages of storage, and these advantages will help for the energy transition. So how we can see in the future the transition of our assets. In fact, it will be dependent on the technology. We have two kinds of technology. Sorry to go a little bit further about that. We have the first main technology is big aquifers, which is we are storing gas on the rock. We are not making anything. We just store, of course, underground, the gas on the rock. This is massive reservoirs. This will be very well designed for the future for methane, but not fossil methane, but for renewable methane. What will be renewable methane? It is already biomethane, and we are now, currently speaking, we are storing some biomethane now in France, but it will be also synthetic methane. We can cap CO2, we can mix this CO2 with hydrogen, and to have this new CH4 that will not be fossil CH4, that will be synthetic CH4. So this is for our aquifer reservoirs. The other technology we used is salt caverns, and salt caverns are very well designed because it's already existing, not for real storage, but for strategic storage on petrochemicals, for example, in the United States or in the UK. It's very well designed to store pure hydrogen, and we do see in the future a real network, hydrogen network, for transportation and to store also hydrogen. European TSO have already published a European map, the hydrogen backbone, a European hydrogen backbone, and our storage are specifically designed and very well designed to be on this long-term view. So this is long-term view, but what we are doing now, despite the crisis, of course, we are heavily working to repurpose some of our storage because we have some cavities, for example, not far from here in the same region, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region, 100 kilometers from here, we have a very small cavity that is no more used for natural gas, and we are repurposing this cavity to hydrogen. And this is not for in 5 years' time, this will be for next year. We are changing the pipe the end of this year, and we will inject and withdraw hydrogen. This is the interesting thing of the test. Next year, we will make 100 times injection and withdraw to see the effect on the hydrogen, to see the effect on the ground also, and to be able to develop completely this cavity that will be at the end, that will be able to store around 50 tons of hydrogen, and this will be ready in 2025. So this is very important because we want to participate for the reason that has very well explained Amir. We want to participate in this neutral carbon world, and it's very important to start from now. This will take only few years. If you start from greenfield, it's 7 years to create a cavity. So if we have the production that we expect in the future, if you look at the references in Europe, we have to start now, and there is a need for help. For example, the example of this project in Étré, close to Bourg-en-Bresse, the name of the project is Hipster. You can go on our website to see it. This is helped by European Union through subsidies, and it's very important also with the Plan de Relance in France that there is some amount of money dedicated to this infrastructure also, because they are already existing and they can heavily participate to the scale-up of hydrogen.
Thanks a lot, Pierre. That means, because Pierre is asking for subsidies, that means you investors, you can go straight away to this kind of project, you need subsidies?
Well, there is always this transition period where you don't always get the economics at the right level immediately. And that's the role, I think, of the public support, is to help that transition period to make it more digestible in terms of the investor's view of being able to cope with that initial period, to dampen a bit the J-curve effect that I was mentioning, to make it more acceptable. So I think we need support. We need support, like in terms of like for renewables initially, when we had a contract for different schemes, that's for production, but also regulations can help a lot. You can have regulations which are more on the stick side or more on the carrot side. In Europe, we're using a lot of the stick, which is probably good, but we can also be quite pragmatic, like in the US, where I think they're pushing things in a more dynamic way, actually, even though they have started later. So I think we can get inspiration.
You are going to speak about this carrot and stick incentives a little bit later. Thank you very much, Amir. Just to say that, if I understood that you are ready to invest in converting infrastructure, but we still need a little bit of subsidies at the beginning, just to de-risk the investment. Pierre, so you are already so thinking about the transition of your own asset. Is it the same for you, François? Are you already thinking about converting your oil infrastructure, your oil caverns?
I think, like Pierre said, one of the core business we have is really the security of the supply of energy. That's where we are. In French, we would say our raison d'être. It's really to have a continuous supply of energy. And we don't even imagine how much important is it. But imagine without energy, we would not be able to come here, to have light, to have lunch. It's very, very important. And we can see any kind of, each time there is a shortage of energy supply, clearly there is immediately some unrest and some troubles, and it's very, very important. So one has to really understand that security of supply is very important. So we cannot shift immediately without taking this into account. So what we are thinking about is not direct, it's not breaking something that is currently working and to be able to have a new thing. This won't work. What we are doing is that we are considering our existing assets, the land we have, the surface we have, the connection means we have. Amir, you talk about connecting the supply and demand. In the energy, connecting supply and demand, you have two means: electric cables and pipelines, whether they are gas pipelines or oil product pipelines. In Storengy, it's gas pipelines. In GeoCell, it's hydrocarbon pipelines. And our pipelines will play a major role in this energy transition. And just let's consider that one of the major subjects for energy transition is mobility. So what we have in France, we have an infrastructure that has been designed for mobility. It's clearly hydrocarbon pipelines. Hydrocarbon pipelines transport hydrocarbons product from a production point or an import point to an oil depot, and from this oil depot to the oil station, where you will fill your car tanks, and tomorrow you will fill your tanks with either electricity, your battery with electricity, because you will have a fast charging station in those stations, because you can have those stations in your own home, because these are industrial assets, not private assets. And then, and if you're using hydrogen is probably something very much relevant for heavy duty mobility or long distance mobility. again, this will happen in dedicated places. And this infrastructure already exists. And that's what's important, that it can be converted. It's relevant. And starting from scratch would cost much more money, and not even talking about money. It would take a huge time. It took a century to build this. So we don't have to spend, we don't have the time to spend another century. So that's one point. And secondly, we have the competencies. The other major point is the competency. You cannot start from scratch. If all of us, if we start to learn a new thing, a new language, a new skill, it takes time. So here, those companies, and we are a nice set of companies among a lot of other companies that also have the competencies, that is very important that we also use our competencies for that. I hope this answers your question.
It answers just, is it feasible, is it technically feasible to convert, I mean, your oil pipeline, your oil, liquid hydrocarbon into any kind of new energies? Tomorrow we'll have storage in massive storage of gaseous in hydrogen in
yes, I mean, it's not, it requires some work. It requires some engineering work, clearly, but it is something reachable. That is something clearly accessible. We can reach that, we can do it. Yes, yes, it is feasible.
Ah, it is. You want to add something?
It's not easy, but it's feasible.
Yeah, if you talked about transmission also for gas, it's exactly the same. I was mentioning the European backbone that was promoted by the transmission system operators. 2/3 of this backbone can be converted from gas to hydrogen, so, and very quickly. So it's a reason why we have to jump in this in order to save money and to save time, which is the two main factors that we have to take into consideration, currently speaking.
But I'm not an expert, and I will never be, but because we have investors, you are developing projects for transition, is there now a business model for storage of new energies so that you can attract investors?
We are at the beginning, so it's exactly what we explained. We have to put in place, first we need some green hydrogen and low carbon hydrogen to be produced, which is in fact, we are still at the beginning. We need also to have consumers, but we do see that decarbonization is now in a priority for a lot of industrial. Heavy mobility also, it's a big issue. So we do think that hydrogen, if you look at the goal of Europe, the Green Deal about that, is going to be very promoted in the future. And for sure, they will need some infrastructure. And for sure, they will need to set up certain rules in order to have the possibility to maintain and to develop and to inject some money in this infrastructure.
Thanks for this explanation. Amir, you want to add something?
Can I add something? There's two scenarios where storage makes a lot of sense. One is if you're producing locally and this production is not necessarily used immediately afterwards, and there's volatility between the production and the demand, is where the storage can play a role, and that's interesting when you have a local production. But also in the dynamic of, for instance, hydrogen and green hydrogen, where we can see that hydrogen could also be produced in other places in the world. It could be produced in Chile, in Australia, in the Middle East, etc. It could be traveling and getting into ports. And once it gets to a port, then between the time it gets to the port and the time it gets to the final consumer, here again it can be interesting to have a place where you can store it. So I think the storage of hydrogen will be a key element of making creating the fluidity of that hydrogen market in the future. And well, of course, then connected with the storage, you have the pipelines. So all of this is very relevant because there's a whole system that can be reused in a very efficient way to make sure that we have a fluidity of the whole new energy system.
Thanks, Amir, for this
just
yes?
If I can add, I can see
and after you will have spoiled all your time, you know.
Yeah. Sorry. No, just I can see the beginning at regional clusters to be development in terms of decarbonization of heavy industry and heavy mobility. But also there is another thing that will come quite soon, I think around the years 2030, and it was explained this morning by the electrical transmission operator, RTE, because in 5 out of the 6 scenarios he presented this morning, we will need some heavy flexibility because there will be renewables in the system, electrical renewables, and there will be intermittency, and hydrogen will be able to absorb the excess of electricity when you don't have any consumption, and hydrogen will be able to produce excess electricity when you need and you have over consumption. Do not, I think you remember what I said at the beginning, we are consuming 5 times more gas in the winter in comparison with the summer. And this seasonal effect, even if we have energy efficiency, will still be there in the future. And the future will be renewable in all cases. Even if you have nuclear, 5 out of the 6 scenarios, 2 are nuclear scenarios, you will need flexibility in the system. It's not a storage operator that is saying that, is the electrical system operator that is saying we will need to store massively hydrogen in the future.
Okay, I think we all get the messages. Okay, just you, and after we spoke about your project, Andrea. Just one last question to François before, because Philippe called for green energy production. He said we need that. We need to make the energy transition. So please, just in a few words, you have a very innovative way of making first path in the energy transition. When I say it's very innovative, it's both because you are a strategic oil storage operator. So, and please tell us just about the projects you are carrying as a first path that would maybe answer the request of Pierre Chambon.
The idea is to, like I said, we have various assets, and some of our assets may be land assets. So we can produce solar energy, but we could not only produce solar energy, but we can convert this energy to hydrogen. And how this idea came to our mind, it's just because we transport products for our industrial customers, and they use this product to make hydrogen. So it's fossil fuel hydrogen with fossil fuel origin hydrogen. So we could shift that, and we could propose them to transport, to produce some green hydrogen in some of our existing assets, and that's the what you call the innovative project. So we just mix both. We don't just took this asset to send another electricity, a lot of electricity on the network at a moment where nobody will really need this electricity, but really to convert this electricity and to make directly the shift between fossil origin hydrogen to green origin hydrogen. So let's just do it. We could do it, so we just did the engineering. That's what we do in our company. We do some engineering work and we make solutions, and it works. As a matter of fact, it works. Everything is on the shelf. You just have to do it.
Maybe I asked you too many times to be short, because I guess that when you say we are using our asset, I don't know whether all the people in the room understood what kind of asset you are talking about. We spoke about your cavern. But maybe you should, in the nice way you explain how it was just shortly, but it could be interesting because it's so innovative, and I don't know whether all the people in the room understood the innovative aspect of this project.
I will enter into probably too much detail.
No.
But we have, among of our assets, we have huge lakes of what we call brine. Brine is
Saumur.
Brine is saumur. It's saturated. It's water with saturated. So, like Pierre, we do operate salt caverns. As a matter of fact, we store our product in a salt layer that is 1,000 meters underneath of the ground, and it's a 1,500 meter thickness of salt layer. And so when we create the caverns have roughly this shape. Roughly it's a cavern. Except that a cavern is 300 meter high with a 50 meter of width. So they are huge caverns. It's basically, the biggest one we have is, imagine 3 stadiums piled up. It's like that, the size of a cavern is about 3 stadiums. And when we build these caverns, we produce massively some brine, some saumure in French, and we store this brine, we use it in our process, and we store this brine in huge lakes. And these lakes every day receive a lot of sun. And so we could use this surface, and there is no life in the brine, because it's exactly like in any place where brine is used as a way to preserve food, as a matter of fact. Brine is used as a food preserver. For centuries, brine has been used for that. So, and there is no life in brine. So we could use this surface to build a solar farm, and this solar farm could produce electricity massively that could be converted into hydrogen at an industrial size. Again, I think what Pierre and I are trying to say, but let's make it clear. It's a massive problem. Energy is not a small problem. It's not a question of changing one thing. It's massive. So we have to find solution at the scale of the problem. And I think that's why it's important to consider existing infrastructures, because this infrastructure has been designed with the good scale. And not only just to cut a ribbon and have some nice pictures. I love this, but it doesn't change anything. And we have to change things. If I understand what Noé told us, we have to change things. So basically, and I think everybody should consider that, what is important is not what we are doing, but maybe what we can expose is the way we are doing. We have been considering what we have in our hands and what can we do right now to change it. So what we have in our hands right now, it's a lot of surface that receive a lot of sun. We can convert this sun to make hydrogen, and as we are connected to industrial customers that are already using hydrogen, we can deliver this hydrogen to these industrial customers right now. And that's what's important. The right now is important.
Thanks a lot, François. Andrea, yes, it is right now, and it is huge also, it is at scale. You could have done something really small, you could have changed the lights in your airport, but you decided to do a massive project, massive transition project.
Yes, actually, I'm quite happy about what you guys have said today. No, because our project, we had a very old heating system for the airport. Turin is quite close to Lyon in terms of average temperatures, quite a cool city. So heating many months a year, and it was fossil driven. It was very old, and we had to change it. Altogether, we had a strategy of self-production for energy. Therefore, a cogenerator, a fossil cogenerator, standard cogenerator, was the main option for all the airports. Actually, other airports in Italy are currently buying cogenerators that run on gas. We actually, all together with a big partner, which is NAM, the bigger distributor gas provider in Italy, they came to us and proposed us fuel cell instead of a regular cogenerator. That means, I'll try to make it very simple, there is no combustion anymore, so nothing is burning. So the gas or whatever you put in, because there is a lot of flexibility in the fuel cell. You don't have combustion, therefore you don't have any more local pollution. So we talk a lot about carbon pollution, but also Turin area, Milan area are very heavily polluted by particulate, by NOx. Therefore, let's start cutting local pollution, which is also a big issue in northern Italy. Then we start thinking about what to put into the fuel cell, because those are hydrogen ready. They can accept up to 40% of hydrogen from day one. So other step, moving forward, we create a demand, which is not that common. So we start betting somehow on the current infrastructure to be sooner or later converted into hydrogen-ready pipes. And the partnership with the biggest distributor in Italy, so we feel pretty confident that that will happen sooner or later. In the meantime, the fuel cell can also run with biogas or biomethane. So we are working on a transition which will be, we start converting our heating system. It will run, it will generate, it will heat the airport, it will generate electricity, and also we run with biogas. And within 10 years' time, because that's within the contract with SNAM, it will also have a blend of hydrogen. So the CO2 impact will be immediately lower because of the higher efficiency of fuel cell, which, by the way, costs a lot more than a cogenerator, and that's the tough part within this project. But we'll start polluting much less. We calculated that the first year of operations, which will be 12 months rolling from the end of 2023 to the end of 2024, will be like 1 million journey by car from Turin to the Turin airport to the city center. That's just by changing the cogenerator into a fuel cell.
But
that's because of the efficiency.
Yeah, sorry, just to be clear, are you using a fuel cell, a unique fuel cell, to hit all the airport? No.
Okay.
Because it may be really a
no,
huge.
it's 60% of the current energy needs. So it's 60%. It's 100% of the heating, because the system is a water heated. I don't want to be boring. It's a water heated, so we're not betting on electricity to currently have heating. And they also work for cooling, because you can convert the heaters into coolers used for the energy used by the fuel cells. And then the remaining part is going to be solar farms, because we are getting approval in order to have much of the land of the airport to have solar farms. Even though we're not in Sicily, we're in Turin, so solar farms can be quite effective, we know. With current prices, it's a very simple exercise in terms of business cases, but it's not probably the best solution for where we are in terms of size, in terms of energy needs. But anyway, I'm very happy because it's future-proof, because it's flexibility. So even if we start with methane, then all of a sudden we can switch it into biomethane, which is our first step, and then start blending with hydrogen. So the quicker the infrastructure will adjust, the sooner we'll be ready to take it.
Everything is linked. But just a last stupid question, sorry. The fuel cell must be huge, because maybe most of us, I don't know, when we think about fuel cell, we think about Toyota Mirai or Hyundai or maybe Stellantis that run.
No, those are the biggest ever.
It must be really huge. Is the technology ready to do that?
Well, it's innovation, we mentioned. So, no, fortunately, this is a very complex project. I'm trying to make it easy in order to explain it, but it's a test, it's innovation. So smaller fuel cell, they're currently running. We're actually installing already a small fuel cell at our fire department within the airport in order to start having a fuel cell and understanding how it works. Actually, that will be already managed with a small percentage of hydrogen, because we'll be producing the hydrogen ourselves. To be transparent, that's because we want to make the authorities in Italy, the aviation authorities, because we have very strict regulations, so we want to start getting them closer to the idea of hydrogen in an airport.
Okay. So we will talk about that. But just so you confirm this is unique in the world, even this kind of project to...
This size, we know that this size is the biggest in Italy, regardless of the airport. Among the European airports, we're pretty sure that we haven't checked with all. We haven't heard anybody actually doing it.
Okay, but Amir, when Andrea told you about this really innovative, really innovative project as investors, weren't you afraid and said, my God, this is risky, I need subsidies? No?
Well, the nice part about this kind of projects is that it falls within the realms of a more general business, which is the airport business, which is a regulated business in Italy, which even with the COVID implications, still is a business that has its long-term value. So it's interesting to take a part of the cash flows that you're getting from sustainable businesses or businesses that have a regulated format, and to take a part of it to invest into the future. And I think this is the way that investors can get comfortable into making those bold moves. It's just because it's not just you're starting from scratch. You're starting with a base of projects that are already up and running. But you should not just be too greedy and just take, I will take 100% of that just for myself. I will reinvest and re-inject part of it into things which will make the asset more sustainable in the long term.
So investments funds mustn't be too greedy.
Not too exactly. It's a big mistake if you do that. And also think long term goes hand in hand.
So anyway, regarding, because you when there is innovation, there are risks. And if I understood well, you try to lower the risk by making the fuel cell working as soon as possible with other things than hydrogen, and then by sharing risk with
because
partners.
Because we had to manage the uncertainty of hydrogen arriving at the airport. So the only way actually to do it was to manage a tool which is flexible. So that's the uncertainty, because I think all the conference is about timing. We are hurry, we must act quick. I share that. So we had to change the system. It was an old one. Why should we just look a little beyond what's available by seeking the next vector, the next true green energy that will become available? And we have a very strong partner, because we're an airport, so we're not into the energy business, which plays a very important role to reassure that everything is sound in terms of business case. And
you're talking about SNAM,
yes,
the gas operator. And Hiro, when we prepared this conference, you also insisted on the need to share risks, to make the investment possible with strong partners. Could you please explain what kind of partners, in which part of the value chain, and what do they do exactly? What does that mean? Because we always say about, building ecosystem, having partners. What does that mean? We understood in the Torino airport case, it's really concrete. There is project. You invest in a lot of things. What does that mean really? And are we ready to make that?
Sure. Making the energy transition for an energy company, it's partnering with your clients. Typically, the most energy-intensive clients are industrial clients, and they have a huge CO2 problem. And if the utilities are converting their business model to that one, that it helps the clients to reduce their CO2 emissions, voila, we are there. Then you start partnering with your clients and you combine these technologies. I mean, nothing we have spoken today is any new technology. I mean, fuel cells have been existing for 100 years, windmills, 1,000 years. The technology is there. The innovation is how to combine it and make it fly. And that's where the platform plays into role, that you make the engineers to talk to each others, and you create these innovative solutions. And if there's some ingredients missing, you apply public funding for that part. But you have the people to cooperate, and we can make the green transition happen overnight.
You have a concrete example of the kind of partner you have, because otherwise it's a little bit theoretical, because you always say we have partnering, but please tell us how to do that.
One business case, Northern Karelia, 30 kilometers from the Russian border, Finland. Swiss company Nestle acquired 10 years back a chicken broth manufacturing facility. It's an agricultural business. So there is not too much of infrastructure in that region, but there is agriculture and chicken farms. So they produce the chickens and turn the chicken to chicken broth, basically consomme in French. And bouillon.
Bouillon, je croyais que c'était
bouillon. Bouillon. And of course, to make bouillon, you need heat. So how to get heat? Traditional method, you burn oil and heat water and utilize that burnt oil to heat your bouillon. And then you have a lot of biohazardous waste when you're slaughtering the chickens. And then you transport the slaughter waste 300 kilometers south. Think about the CO2 emissions of the lorry trucks. And then you process that waste to unuseful things. Where we came into play, we partnered with Nestle and let's make a biogas reactor. we intake all that biological waste, turn that in a biogas reactor into gas, combust that gas, and with that combustion energy generate warm water or heat to make that bouillon. And that's it. I mean, quite sort of puts together, and it works together. And it's a business case. No public support, nothing. It's a big investment, yes, but it stands on its own merits. And voila, one factory in Northern Karelia is carbon negative.
When you speak about that, it seems so easy. But I know...
you need to have the right supplier.
Pierre, is it so, and maybe François also, is it so easy to build ecosystem partnership? Because we are the example of Andrea, so production, and then you are the user, and we are also talking about all making ecosystem with all the value chain of a big part of the value chain. Is it easy? I mean, we heard about Scandinavian, Italy. Can we make it here? Is it easy to make this kind of value chain integration partnership for infrastructure?
I don't know if it's easy, but it's key, in fact, to have this kind of partners. Why? Because we have to, in some kind, to share risk. As an industrial, I'm ready to take my industrial risk, but I'm very ready to share my financial risk. So to have financial on board, it's very important. And this is, as we said, it's not new, it's not an innovation. We are already operating a site close to the site of François in the south of France with a financial CNP Assurance, which is a financial institution in France, and we are very happy to operate things like that. So this is the first kind of partner we need to inject some money and to scale up the system or to help us to adapt the system. The second kind of partners we need is, in fact, we need to share the use of this infrastructure between different project producers and consumers. So we need to give them on a confidential and non-discriminatory basis access to our infrastructure in order to share the volume risk, as was talking before. This is our assets are massive, and when we will convert it to hydrogen, specifically at the start, we need to share the burden of these assets with the producers, with different producers and with different consumers. So it's why we are launching with the transport system operator, for example, in the south of France, what we call lab infrastructure, some pre-feasibility study to address to the market who will be interested to consume and transport and store hydrogen for consumption and to transport and store hydrogen for production. So we test the market and we see if they are ready to share it. And the third point also, we need to partner with authorities. European authorities, I think you have seen the gas package. European authority want in the gas package the hydrogen to be regulated by 2030. This is a draft, it should be discussed with the member state, but this is, a direction that is very important. They have fixed a direction and we need to partner with them, and with all the stakeholders should partner in order to say, okay, it is good or it is not good. Another possibility, of course, is in terms of safety. We need to partner with safety regulators, because hydrogen is not natural gas. It is molecules, so we know how to do it, but everything has to be written. How we have a permit, a license, etc. So this is a kind of partners also we need on board. So you see, this example I gave you in Hipster, there is all this kind of person that are partnering together, producers, consumers, safety regulator. CRE in France is also very interested by the project in order to fix the rules and in order to promote and to scale up after at the national level or even the European level.
Thanks, François. I think when Pierre was talking, you were saying yes. You agree, and
I was really nodding because what Pierre says basically, I would say let's summarize a partnership. Let's call it a market. What we need is a market with true customers who will pay for that, and that means that we have to be conscious that we have to put the price of this infrastructure into the market. That is what is existing in the existing market for oil and gas products or electricity products. We pay for the service. Initially, when these services came, they were considered as very expensive. And when we considered the usage, we really saw that the usage was quite interesting. Imagine that we pay, when we purchase a liter of gasoline, 2/3 of the price are taxes. That really means that, well, we pay for the service. So we have to find a market, and partnerships are quite easy. I mean, Pierre and I are neighbors. We talk on a regular basis. It's easy. If we have a project, we have good engineers that they are really keen to work together. We have good investors, they are really keen to work together. We need the authorities. We need the authorities to understand that they do not have to they should not overburden us with too much complexity. I mean, really permitting complexity, because it's obviously it's important to consider any side effect of a project. Okay, but again, this takes time. It's not consistent to say that we should act. We have so many years before we cannot do anything, and take 10 years to decide to build an offshore wind farm, for example. I'm talking about offshore wind farm because there are no offshore wind farms here. But it takes too much time. It's too complex. And if we have an emergency, then we have to work on an emergency basis. And most of the project, and if you consider at the end of the day, most of the negative bysides of the project have been overcome. It's easy to overcome. It's only a matter of working on it. So not overburdening our project so that we can do them in a safe manner. And then again, organize a market. Really organize a market. Organize the customers, the distribution of the market, the rules with which this market will work. And then it will be easy to make the good partnerships, industrial, combine the infrastructure, see how we can do. But your customer, my customer, and at the end of the day, they have other customers. And these other customers are all of us. Because the product we buy, if we take care about the carbon content of the product, then all this economy will work.
It will work, and especially if you started talking about regulation, so if we have the appropriate regulation, short time for permitting and so on, abiding by all the environmental requirements, of course. Huh? And Andrea, you said one word about the fact that energy transition, we are talking about planes, of course. We are always seeing already the hydrogen plane. Of course, everybody in the media are talking about hydrogen plane. But in the regulation, if I understood well, the energy transition of airport is not even mentioned.
No, the point is air transportation, that includes airports, has been somehow aimed at as a very polluting industry. So I don't want to discuss about this, even I don't share this view. But that has somehow taken out, instead of including the industry in order to foresee some kind of, in Italy we have a PNRR, which is the money coming from Europe in order to somehow accommodate the transition. Air transportation has been set apart. Like, it's a polluting industry, so we don't want it to change, which is quite awkward if you think about a future without air transportation. So there, without getting into politics, I think there was somehow, they probably missed a little bit the point. Nevertheless, our project is not based upon any public funding, and I think it's the best way, if you can, to have a sound business case that doesn't rely on public funding. Otherwise, that public funding might not come, and you will keep on polluting. That's pretty much the point.
Thanks a lot, Andrea. That's a nice conclusion. So if I try to summarize, and please tell me if I forget something, because I would like to leave some time for the question from the audience. So what kind of infrastructure. We need fluid infrastructure, taking into account the new ones. Of course, we will need new infrastructure for the energy transition, but also we have to think in a clever way how to convert the old ones so they can be really complementary with the new one. And we need to create a market with strong partnership, and if we can avoid subsidies, it could be great, because the regulation is not yet in place, but we have to partner with authority to help them in this new way of thinking, because actually we all know that when we speak to public authorities, there is the economy on one side, the environmental thing on one side, and it's really, really hard to have them talk together. So, did I forget something?
No, I want to add something, listening to your summary, which is very accurate, is that in fact, in the Ukraine crisis has really shed light on the fact that we are extremely interdependent on the energy side, from different places where the energy is supplied in particular, and that creates has a lot of implications on the daily lives of people. I mean, if you look at how the prices have spiked in some places, it's really disruptive to some economies and to some people who have to pay for the electricity bill, which is also dependent on the gas price. And a way to avoid that is to create this fluidity that you were mentioning, because if you don't have boundaries, and if the energy can go freely in different locations, and if you're not just dependent on one source of energy, but then you can source that energy from different places, then effectively you're creating a world that is less dependent on certain geopolitical risks, but effectively you're creating a world that is more stable, and I think it's to the merit of all the final consumers and even citizens to have a more peaceful energy stability as a result of infrastructures being in place. So I think it's not just a matter about optimizing the cost and getting good returns for investors. It's also something that is in the full interest of the whole society.
Thanks, Amir. Nice conclusion. Thanks for doing my job. Thanks a lot. We have time for some questions. We have 5 minutes, because you are going to ask clear and short questions, and the answers will be clear and short also. So who dare to ask the first question?
Thank you for this great roundtable. My name is Antoine Huard. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Verso Energy. I have a quick question regarding the regulation. You have mentioned the importance of regulation, and we completely share that view. Our concern as a developer and investor in hydrogen production is really, what will I do if I invest in a 20 megawatt electrolyzer, and in 5 years' time there is a pipe coming, bringing hydrogen at a much lower cost that will cannibalize the business model? It's great to have an infrastructure and a network, but what signal should the regulation give to investors in order to make sure that we don't just wait and we start investing now, and we are sure that we will not lose our economic space when the network will arrive? I'm not sure if my question is clear. My question is for everyone who wants to answer.
I don't have the answer because I'm not a regulator, so I don't really have the answer to what you are saying. But basically, what you are saying, there are two models. There are the massive, energy is a massive issue, clearly. And at the end of the day, if we want to make this shift, we have to make it massively. There are two pathways. This morning at the introduction session, we had some questions about the middle report. Some people think that there is only one way, is degrowth. Some other people, and I think most of us here are on this side, think that if we use our brain and our capability to think ahead, we can cope, we can overcome this challenge that we have in front of us. But it's a massive challenge. So energy is a massive challenge. There are basically two models. There are local models, and what you are describing is a local investment model. So you have to make sure that your business will be sustainable and you will have off-takers on the long range, and you have to consider your investment in this economy. We all do the same. We are all facing. Each time you invest, you consider the fact that somebody may come in a few years with a much better solution than the one you are. It's really the investor's risk and the investor's nightmare. Well, I think the only answer is do it at a large scale, be competitive, and negotiate. I mean, clearly, and negotiate. And maybe you would be also very happy to have an infrastructure connected to your installation, and maybe you can be part of that system. I mean, I would talk. Let's talk together.
I think the question was maybe also about what signals should be given, right? And to avoid the scenario where you're starting a project with a given off-taker, and then 5 years down the line, another off-taker comes and kind of kills that project. And I think then the signal should be that there should be incentives or schemes that helps that the off-take contracts are as long as possible when you start, right? A bit like renewables 15 years ago when it started with 20 years and then it became shorter over time. So maybe one message to think about is how can we create this scheme where we have this long-term support, like contract for difference, for instance, on a long-term basis, so that people, when they start, they know that they have a short payback and a long-term ability to get cash flows over a long time. And even if the competitors come, then it's not an issue.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Amir. Sorry, the lady who is going out just tell me that there is another conference after us, so I'm really sorry. Time is running, but I'm sure if you have other questions, you can catch all these speakers outside, and they will be happy to answer your questions. Thanks a lot for this conference.